Okay, so right now it's an E period on 31st of December 2025 at 11:49 a.m. and it's actually a double positive lunar unit for another 20 minutes approximately. Now, in this video, you're going to learn how to actually benefit from and practically apply real and true, authentic wisdom in your life. And this is for all human beings to know. And this is for all human beings of all ages, okay? Right? You have to know this. So the subject that we're talking about right now is extremely important. It's extremely crucial. And it's the subject of who or how to actually attain counsel from. This could be as simple as when you're a teenager, you ask your parents about something and they tell you, okay, yeah, here's how to do this. This is what you got to do. Yeah, do it like this, do this, don't do this, right? Whatever it is, whether you're a grown-up or teenager or whatever your age, if you're a human being, right, and you're hearing this message, obviously, then you have to have the ability to actually know who, and more specifically and most relevantly though, you have to know who to actually quote unquote, and here's the thing, when I say trust, I'm talking about like always trusting in the Creator and having wisdom be your helper, okay? Sent from the Creator, right? Yet, in terms of interactions with other human beings, you have to know and actually be able to discern who you can even quote unquote trust or not. And this is to a limited extent, of course, because we all know, obviously, there are varying degrees of wisdom that people have. Okay? You can't ask the average person, hey, what is going to happen tomorrow? And if I do this, can you tell me what the future results of that action will be? There are some people who can tell you this, yet not everybody can. And moreover, it's actually critical that, especially as a young person now, because I'm thinking about young people also, and adults too. Yet, even just the subject of having good guidance and counsel in your life, especially as a young person, is absolutely crucial. It's so important. And ideally, of course, and normally, that would be provided by your parents, right? As it was in my case, or it is in my case. Interesting, it still is the case. That I am blessed. My earthly father, rest in peace, right? He had provided me with the most excellent and authentic, magnificent and awesome wisdom that basically also could be described as the most important things that a father communicates and has to communicate to his son, right? So I'm highly blessed with that. And so should you be, okay? Because here's the thing. From personal experience, right, I know for a fact that not everybody, hopefully everybody, and in due season, all, right? Yet, just like in this forest here, you've got trees, right? Some of these trees are mature and they're bearing good fruits. Some of them are still young and they're going to bear good fruits in due season, and so on, because human beings are all at different levels of basically spiritual evolution and so on. If we're able to provide all of humanity with the right things, then we have to do that. Okay, out of how, God willing. And so that's why I'm making this vlog, because I know some things. I have operated victoriously and magnificently time and time again with this, and I know what I'm talking about. Okay? And I also know, because of what I know, that it's imperative that, many, hopefully all, will have this same ability. In fact, you have to, learn it. Okay? You have to receive this, learn it, and apply it. And how are you going to get this, right? How are you going to get the right counsel in life? Asking a question like this. Imagine if I were to ask you, how do you know who you can trust? And how do you know what the right decision is to make? And it doesn't matter who you are. You could be young, forever young, right? You could be of all ages, right? You have to know, you have to have something. And this something is simply wisdom, okay? Wisdom is a principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all that getting, get understanding. And the beginning of wisdom is a fear of God, okay? And that's it. Now, you'll be provided with it in due season, yet it's absolutely imperative, right? Totally essential that you have legitimate and authentic wisdom, and you retain it, and you practically apply it in your life, because that equals a good life, and it equals absolute safety, absolute victory, absolute, total, and permanent goodness. And that, even and like all the time, even if the world is going to hell, there's nothing that can penetrate the safety and the security and the absolute permanent and potentially lifelong, right? In as much as you operate wisely all of your life, right? Day in, day out, maintain a little bit of self-discipline. The safety and the security and even all the good things and the benefits and the blessings, right? Good blessings that come from wisdom, having wisdom and practically applying it in your life. It's a source of permanent safety, okay? And I'm talking about a safety that cannot be breached by anything or anybody whatsoever, because it simply has to do with how the universe systematically and perfectly works, how the Creator made it, and you living according to how it's supposed to be and how it is intended and how the Creator made it to be. So it's like you're in harmony with the cycles of life. You're living in a way that makes you permanently and increasingly prosperous. And this is something that nobody can stop or change except yourself. Okay, as a master, right, of your life and your destiny, you are mastering your good destiny, even to the point where the life and the way that your life is right now is actually already as good as it gets. Do you understand what that equates? This is because of practicing what is known as self-mastery. Now, people of all ages should do this. And obviously, even, I'm just thinking about the different groups of humans and ages, whether, technically, you learn this from your parents, right? But see, now here's the question though. Heaven forbid, what if your parents haven't taught you this? I'm thinking about myself now. I learned this from my dad. Well, what if, right? So there's got to be a way that all human beings everywhere can benefit from and actually also learn and then what do you call that? Gradually and safely apply wisdom in their lives, because that's how it's supposed to be, and that's the best way that it is, and that's the best way to live. And it also equals and includes many divine benefits like safety and health and wealth and the ability to actually accomplish any good thing and to avoid, right? To avoid, to preemptively identify, circumnavigate, and even avoid every unnecessary evil or peril or problem or whatever. In other words, you can actually live a life that is wholly perfect, day in, day out, if you have what is known as something along the lines of mastery of self, or a certain amount of self-discipline and practical application of wisdom as you go, okay? Now, this is the truth. This actually works. I do this every day, all day, except, for example, to certain degrees on the Sabbath day itself, in terms of only doing what is necessary for survival, okay? In accordance with the law, okay? Now, imagine for a moment, right? Imagine that, wow. Imagine if you learn, no, don't even imagine, just do it. Listen to what I'm saying and then do this yourself. The sooner you start actually practicing, learning and then successfully practicing self-mastery, hey, the better your life and the very good and really good and the better very good and it is and it gets and it will be and it is. See, the thing is, we're living in a world where there are actually a ton of extremely foolish, first of all, foolish, and secondarily, because of that, also sort of evil and unnecessary dangers and problems. And like, there's nothing new under the sun. You're looking at a world that it's actually perfect. It was created by the Creator. Life is actually perfect. It's ordered that way. It can be that way with a little bit of wisely coordinated living. You can already live perfectly forever. It's possible. It's a daily sort of a practice of a little bit of self-mastery as we go, right? What does that look like practically? Taking a deep breath, right? Taking another one if you have to, and not, going over the top, even though you could, right? Stuff like that. Yet, moreover, it's about knowing what cycles of life you're in. To be precise, we're talking about something like navigational and calendar and mapping work that has to be done. So I'm thinking about making this as simple and as accessible as possible for all. So if you were a child, your parents would make a map for you, and they would be making the maps, and you would learn that from them, right? Yet, you're gonna have to learn to do it yourself, because that's the best way to. You gotta have the capability to live in harmony with the cycles of life, and to be able to do that, you have to map the cycles of life that you're in, and know what cycles of life you're in, and how this all works. You have to read and study a book, and the name of this book is called Self-Mastery and Fate with the Cycles of Life. Okay, now, even if you're just listening to this, I would say the easiest approach would be to listen to what's being said in this video and write down whatever is strikingly interesting to you, and remember the key points, and then read this book that I recommend. It's free, and study it, and that will pretty much cover it all, generally speaking. So can you imagine this, that actually a human being can go from, wow, here's the thing, even though there's, see, there's a time and a place for everything under heaven. Yet, generally speaking, as a human being, you could basically go from the sort of, I was about to say, sort of the almost like the normal sort of a worldly sort of a state of existing that's sort of, that is subject to, that has these sort of disadvantages that are based on almost like lack of knowledge, and that being sort of a problem based on, just based on where we're at right now and what's going on, and the level of, I guess, or the level of good work that's been put in terms of that, the average person doesn't know what tomorrow brings. The average person doesn't know how to actually, not necessarily, many do, and people do this instinctively on a different level of natural instinct, right? Because life has been made a certain way that is good. But see, there's a major difference between existing in the normal sort of a state where, you think, there's so much nonsense and folly out there. Like, some will say, oh, what is, I was walking the other day and I heard a man say something. I almost had to go up to him and say, hi, how are you? May I, because the guy said, he said something like, the more he knows nothing or something. God. So what I'm saying is that the world is full of unnecessary, actually immature compared to a certain level of maturity. And remember, that is because of the fact that there's a time and a place for everything under heaven, and that, all in due season, yet now and today is the day and now is the time, okay? So there's a lot of nonsense and foolishness and unnecessary potential problematic and even predicament and evil and dangers in life. There are a lot of them. And the good thing is that, see, life itself is in fact very good, and it can be lived very good. In order for that to be the case, though, there has to be a standard amount of wisdom that you basically receive and that you retain and you work with. And see, accessing this is the interesting thing. Accessing this now, generally speaking, and as it has been the case for so many years, generally it would be written in books. And you would get these books from a library, you would get these books from, off the internet or whatever. And that's good. And that's basically still how the most important wisdom is actually attained. In addition to the most original and, divinely, perfectly pre-provided source, and that's literally from what is known as something like God within, or what some would call the holy breath. Basically, a small, still voice, a sense of knowing within, like a divine intuition. That will also teach you everything. Yet, look, you have to have something that is known as the holy law, and even the right books, even physical books to read, because those are like operating manuals. Okay. Now, if there was a way, see, look, think about this. If there was still, you remember hearing about the Library of Alexandria, for example? Imagine if there were, think about this, something like a library or a real school, a self-mastery school, right? If there was a giant building standing here with perfect architecture, perfect design, perfect ergonomics, offices, classrooms, everything, just the most absolutely magnificent and perfect and wisely designed, super genius educational institution, right? People would come there. But at this point, it's like, I've got a YouTube channel, and the information that I have to share is sort of as if I'm giving my lecture onto the internet, and thus to all humans, hopefully. Yet it really would be simpler. In other words, you would go to school, right? You'd have a school, you'd go there and you'd get education. And the most important education, think about this for a minute. The most important education that exists is actually by divine instruction, and that will come. And thank God, though, it would actually come to everybody, no matter where they are or who they are, because of how God made everything, so that he could communicate with us from within. So that's already safe. Like, the most important base is already covered, yet it really takes more, and it takes like the scientific progress, the scientific discoveries that have been made by intelligent, wise human beings for thousands of years, and the additional knowledge that has been gained about life and the cycles of life and how it works, right, has been put into books over the past couple thousands of years. And you have to have access to these books. It's really important, right? So, yeah. Imagine if you would have learned what I'm talking about in school. Imagine if we would have learned this when we were children in school. Now, thank God I learned it from my dad when I was a child, right? And a teenager and whatever, young adult or whatever it's called. Yet the skill of self-mastery is such an important thing. It should actually be taught everywhere, in every school, everywhere, to everybody. Because it's what makes the ultimate difference. It also is what makes the ultimate difference in what a human being actually accomplishes that is good, and that actually leads to the greatest good and the highest good happening to everything and everybody. Okay? And this is a fact. See, some of the greatest accomplishments in history have actually been accomplished by those who were sort of apparently sort of initiated into or had knowledge of this system of self-mastery, right? So it's such an important skill. And to think that, for example, as I speak right now, what is it today? I think they're on holiday. But that there are billions of humans in schools these days. Are you learning this? Like, think about this for a minute. Yeah, arithmetic, reading, writing, physical education, biology, science. Yeah, those are good things. And listen, the most important thing for you as a human, okay, is to be able to actually actively determine your destiny and make it a good one. That's extremely important. See, it's a very rare thing. It's become rare. And the reason it seems to have become rare is just because of how it's sort of comparable to like having like wildflowers, where there's really, 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 really rare and special types of plants that grow in certain places. They're not everywhere, okay? In some places they are, and they're rare, and that's it's like it's almost like gemstones here, like gemstones. It's like what I'm talking about is comparable, but it's eternally valuable. But it's comparable to gold. It's like gold is hard to find, it's rare, and it's extremely valuable, right? It can be found with wisdom. What I'm talking about is worth even more than all of that. So it's a thing where this has to be known, okay? Now, what's interesting too is that so it's not realistic to assume that all humans would, for example, adopt a certain way of living or quote unquote religious life. It's just not very realistic. At the same time, there is a way that all humans can live a good life, a very good life, even as good of a life as those who are quote unquote religious, or who have more of almost like a little bit more a longer checklist of how to live, what to do and what not to do, okay? So I'm saying is that any person, this is true. It doesn't matter what so-called race, religion, creed, or national origin, any person whatsoever can practice self-mastery and benefit from it and live as good of a life as the most, shall we say, you know, like whatever, the most blessed person you've ever heard of, so to say. It's fully equally available. All the good things are equally available to all humans, okay? The key is being able to access the good in life. And being able to access the good in life has to do with knowing what time it is, what cycles of life you're in. And if you know that, then you know what it is the time for, and then you can basically sort of work on the right things, wherefore it is a time, and they work. And this is how it works, basically speaking. Based on the idea and the saying that there's a time and a place for everything on earth and under heaven. It's true, okay? It is how it is. So, knowing that, you should be able to start self-mastery. Because, see, think about this. Every human is actually mastering their life and destiny already. I would say sort of very distinctively differentiated between knowingly or unknowingly, in varying degrees in between. You should know, right? And you should also have real, legit wisdom. You should have that and benefit from that because it equals a permanently safe and a good life. And this is like something that nobody can take away. It's based on what you sort of produce by how you move and how you live. And you're the one that determines what happens, okay? You can't be subject to any of the idiots, the folly, or the nonsense or the foolishness of the world anymore. If you have legitimate wisdom as a blessing and you retain it and you work with it, it works for you. Everything works good for you. It all does. It has to, okay? So, like, this is a serious and important skill because there's enough examples in the world of foolishness. The most dangerous thing in existence is actually something like evil, but that is actually something along the lines or related to foolishness, like the opposite of wisdom. Because what that produces is not like, so if you were to look at the world, what you see that's wrong is like a result of foolishness or evil. So that's the only problem there is. When that's eliminated, you just have everything good and it's all good to go forever. Okay? And so be it. Yeah? So read the book. There's a PDF and, start working on it in small, safe steps and you'll